when you have a conversation with a provider, they're not gonna just blatantly bully you, right? Like, they're gonna come at it from an angle that seems like, "Hey, I have your best interest in mind." And maybe they do, and maybe they're also just uneducated. Not uneducated like they shouldn't be a doctor, but uneducated about what informed consent means, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes they can tell us something, whether they mean it or not, in a way to sound like it is in our best interest, and it's really not. So your question is, how do we actually know? Are we getting the full picture?
I'm Jamie Zaki, IBCLC and Mama 5, and this is the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast, where pregnant and new mothers learn how to prepare for and overcome breastfeeding challenges without being controlled by stress, fear, and anxiety. Each week, we'll answer your questions, share breastfeeding success stories, and inspire you to shut out the toxic whispers of the world and embrace your God-given intuition to make confident breastfeeding decisions. Let's dive in. I am so glad that you're here with me today. I know this episode is coming out on Black Friday. You are so busy. I hope you had a beautiful Thanksgiving yesterday if you are in the United States and if you are starting to prepare your holiday shopping chaos. I know how crazy that can all be, and I am so grateful that you are still here with me today. Today, we are going to be talking to my friend Taylor about informed consent. And I know we talk about that a lot on this podcast, but it is really, really important that we talk about it right now again, because this window between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's is when the most inductions happen, the most pressure happens, and when the support systems are not as readily available as they should be and need to be. And so, because of that, I want to make sure that as you welcome your baby, you are reminded of how important informed consent is. And we are having a very real conversation about informed consent today. So, I hope you are ready to be inspired. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you that I have a free 5 mistakes to avoid when breastfeeding guide that you can download right now at littlebearlactation.com/mistakes. That's /MISTAKES. It's linked in the show notes. I want you to go ahead and grab that for free because it lays out the top 5 most common breastfeeding mistakes that I see new moms falling for. And the thing is, they're pretty much preventable as long as you have a good base understanding of breastfeeding, of how to navigate early challenges. You can avoid these challenges and make breastfeeding just a little bit easier. So go ahead and grab that guide. The link is in the show notes and then listen in because today's episode is a great one. We are back with Taylor Shaffer from the Holistic Pregnancy Podcast. Taylor, can you introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do and why you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like she said, my name is Taylor. I am a mom, first and foremost. I have 2 little girls and a wife to my awesome, supportive husband. But I am currently residing in upstate South Carolina, and I own a doula agency here where we have a handful of people on our team. We're Greenville Home Birth Doulas, and we specifically serve moms who are looking for physiologic birth outside the hospital. But I'm also the founder of Nested and Nourished, which is an online community and a home basically for women who want to approach pregnancy and birth and postpartum with confidence and autonomy and deep nourishment. So we really focus a lot on that nourishment piece as well as informed consent, autonomy, all the things that we're going to be talking about today. So I have online courses. I also have a podcast, like Jamie mentioned, called Holistic Pregnancy. I've got a great online Facebook community. We've just got a little bit of everything. So yeah, it's just been really fun, and I'm super passionate about autonomy. So this is going to be a great conversation.
I love that. And I love you were just talking about like the nourishment. And I was actually just talking to a company who focuses on postpartum nutrition. And I was like, we were talking about that nourishment and how important that is. And you just saying that made me think of how like informed consent, what we're talking about today, is like nourishment for the soul. And then you
Totally.
need nourishment for the body. So it all goes together really well. So we're talking about informed consent today. And I always tell people it's kind of funny because when I was in nursing school, you know, that you're preached informed consent, informed consent, informed consent. You need to get the consent signs formed or signed, like the consent forms signed. Wow, I just said that like all jumbled. But it was like everything was informed consent. And then I remember they were talking about vaccines actually. And I was like, but what about informed consent? And they were like,
this is informed consent. You're giving information and they're consenting. And I'm like, that's not the point of informed consent. It's benefits and risks and letting them decide. And so I kind of carried that conversation with me all through motherhood and my experience supporting women during birth, because it's unfortunate but true that the informed consent that the hospital speaks of is not true informed consent. So could you tell us what informed consent is?
Yeah. So this is a big one. I like to refer to those forms, those informed consent forms that they give you as like cover your ass contracts, basically. Um, they're all about liability. Consent forms in a hospital, especially around pregnancy and birth, are for liability reasons. So they are going to maybe say something about risks, maybe say something about benefits. They're going to be hidden in there in the fine print because legally they have to do that. But the difference is that those consent forms are about liability. Informed consent is about autonomy. And that is the missing piece, right? So signing that piece of paper doesn't mean that you are actually informed about the thing that you're about to undergo, or whether you're declining or accepting, doesn't mean that you actually got the picture. It just means that you agreed to do it or you declined to do it. So true informed consent means understanding why something is being recommended, not just this is what it is. So that means what the risks and the benefits are, what the alternatives are, what happens if you decline it. Like, what does this mean truly for your health at the end of the day, and not being fear mongered or coerced into it. And honestly, the biggest piece that is usually missing here is, like you said, Jamie, given time to decide and to be given free choice and not said like, hey, this is what you should be doing, so sign this form if you're cool with that. Actually, it should be, hey, here is what we recommend. Here is why. Here are all of the risks, all of the benefits. Here's what you could do instead. Here's what happens if you do nothing. Take some time to think about this and decide what you feel is best. I've never heard a doctor say that in a traditional hospital setting. I have witnessed my midwife say that and a couple of other providers that I love and trust. But it's very rare, unfortunately, especially when it comes to pregnancy and birth. We're treated like patients and not like human beings who are undergoing a normal physiologic process, right? So, yeah, they typically just jump straight to compliance and not consent. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah. No, as you were speaking, I was just thinking like a couple different things. I always tell people that like the other side of informed consent is respected refusal. Like it cannot be informed consent if somebody does not respect your decision to refuse. Like
Yep.
simple as could be. But the other thing that just you talking about the consent forms being a legal document, and that's all, reminded me of a conversation that I had with one of my husband's friends, like shortly after my son was born. And I remember we were talking about like some birth stuff and some consent forms, like I think it was VBAC forms or something. And he was a attorney and he dealt with contracts like on a regular basis. And he was like, you would not believe this, but those consent forms are the easiest things to get thrown out in the court of law.
Really?
Yeah, and I just remember that conversation and thinking like, so why? Like they keep saying it's for liability, but and it's like obviously like nobody's gonna have the money to go against this hospital, right?
Right. No,
Not
of course not.
even like it's all about legality and it's not even that serious. Like they can get that thrown out easily. It just made me think like it's almost like showboating to show power.
Yep. Like it's also on their conscience, probably like, well, we did our due diligence. They signed a form. They agreed to this. So like we didn't, I feel like they probably, I'm making assumptions here, but if I were in the position of being a provider, showing up to this person I never met, and I'm about to do something potentially life altering to them, it would make me feel better if they signed a form saying it was cool with them, you know?
Yeah.
So if I'm like, that's the only thing I know how to do because I'm a surgeon, not
Mhm.
a person who assists people in birth. I went to school for surgery. That's what I'm best at. And I'm
Yeah,
recommending
right.
that this
When
person have surgery.
yeah.
I'm going to want them to sign a form that says they're okay with me operating on them. Like it's not like I'm going in and being this person's friend and their confidant and holding their hand and saying, well, sure, I went to school for surgery, but also let me be your support person right now. That's not what they're there to do. They're like, my job is to do this. So sign this paper saying you're okay with it. And then we can all move on with our lives.
Mhm. Yeah. If y'all could see her face right now. Like it's true. It's true. And that's I do want to caveat. That's not to say that there aren't good doctors out there who do make an effort, but they're far and few between.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I'm making maybe some generalizations here, but unfortunately, I've just
It's the
I've seen a lot, and I thought that the further I got into birth work, the more faith I would have in doctors, and actually it really is the opposite.
yeah. Unfortunately, also in the area you are, it's not they're not going to be the first people to learn what to do. I guess I should
No.
You talked about informed consent being the opportunity to take the time to make a decision and to not be coerced. So, how can a mom know that she's actually being given the full picture and that, she's striving to exercise her right to informed consent? She's trying to ask the right questions, but she's also maybe a little afraid or concerned, or her partner is a little skeptical and they don't know how to be sure that they are not being coerced, because I think so often doctors and nurses can seem so compassionate in the advice that they give. So you think they must be giving you the full truth, and that's not always accurate. So what is it that they can kind of do to kind of figure out, like, are we being fooled here? Like, how do we ask the right questions? How do we decide?
Totally. I think it's I mean, in most situations when you have a conversation with a provider, they're not going to just blatantly bully you, right? Like they're going to come at it from an angle that seems like, "Hey, I have your best interest in mind." And maybe they do, and maybe they're also just uneducated. Not uneducated like they shouldn't be a doctor, but uneducated about what informed consent means, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes they can tell us something whether they mean it or not in a way to sound like it is in our best interest, and it's really not. So your question is, how do we actually know? Are we getting the full picture? So the first thing you need to do is ask questions, like real questions, not like, can I do that? Or can I decline that? Like, first of all, I don't like to ask for permission, but maybe that's just me.
Fair.
um, and I totally understand if you're like, I feel really intimidated by an authority figure or someone who has literally gone to school for 10 years to do this, and I haven't. So what do I know? First off, I want to encourage you that because you are the mother and you have the ability to follow your maternal instincts, also called your intuition, right? But you can ask questions. So you probably, if you're listening to this episode and you are pregnant or you've been in this world at all, you've probably heard of the brain method, which is benefits, risks, alternatives, intuition, and nothing. So, what that means is anytime you are presented with a potential test or procedure or intervention, you can ask the questions: what are the benefits of this? What are the risks of this? What are the alternative options if I still want to do this thing, but I want to do it differently? What does my intuition say? Like, what is that gut feeling? And then what happens if I do nothing, if I sit back and wait? So that's the first thing you can do is assess those things and get really specific and direct with your questions to your provider. And then once you ask a question, pause and let them fully answer. And if they get defensive, that is a red flag. Okay. If they're trying to dismiss you, if they're trying to like shake it off, like it's not a big deal. Maybe you're asking like a really important question that is going to completely shape the way that your birth experience goes. And they're like, oh, well, it'll probably be fine, or it's no big deal, or, well, most people do this way and it turns out fine. First of all, that's subjective. And second of all, that's them dismissing your question. That's not answering the things that you were asking them. So the goal here is not to be a difficult patient, right? Like we all want to be civil. We all want to be on the same page with our provider. We want to all be on the same team because at the end of the day, if you're putting your birth experience, potentially your life and your baby's life in their hands, you probably want to have a good relationship with them, I would imagine, right? So the goal really is not to piss people off in this situation, but it is to be a well-informed participant in your care. You are not being told what to do. You guys are working together to create a plan. Yes, they are the doctor, but also, yes, it is your body and your baby. You hired them for their expertise. That means you can choose to listen to their expertise or you can choose to ignore what they tell you. So you have every right to ask all of those questions and then to say, I would like some time to decide. Let's revisit this at my next appointment if it's a prenatal test or whatever. Like, you can go home, you can ask for other people's opinions. Like, maybe you have a doula or you have another friend who is in the birth world or whatever, and you want to ask someone else's opinion, get a second opinion. Maybe you want to go home and read a book, listen to a podcast, research on your own. You have every right to do that. And if they make it seem like, no, you have to decide right now, aside from a rare true emergency situation, if it is not emergent and they're making it feel like, okay, you need to answer me because I just said this thing to you, that's a red flag. They're getting defensive, dismissive, won't answer your questions, that's a red flag. So, if in any of those cases, I would, one, take some time, go home, think about it, sleep on it, don't feel pressure to make a decision right there. And two, if this continues to happen, I would really evaluate, is this the person that I want to be in the room when I have my baby? Is this the person I want to be in charge of my care? Because if the answer to that is no, or if you're afraid or intimidated or you just flat out don't like this person, it is never too late to switch providers, ever.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I switched providers with my second at, or my first, sorry, at 34 weeks.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen people switch at 42 weeks because
Yeah.
their provider risked them out of care. And they were like, well, I'll just go find another midwife who will take me on. And you know what? They had a great home birth. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always tell people the same thing. Like, it's never too late. Even if they say it's too late, it's not. Next question. You kind of talked about emergencies. And like you said, like, except for the rare emergency, like, how do you know if it's an emergency? Like, if everybody's acting like it's an emergency, how can you kind of gauge, like, is this an emergency or do we have time?
well, it's pretty rarely an emergency. I'll start with that. If you are in labor and they're like, okay, your baby, their heart rate has dropped and it's not coming back up. We have to get them out if they want to live. That would be an emergency, right? If it's like 5 minutes or less to save a life, we have to rush you back, put you under general anesthesia. We don't even have time to get an epidural. That would be an emergency. If they are saying, we'd like to prep you for C-section and let's get you an epidural, let's get you nice and shaved, let's do all of these things, that is not emergent. If it's an emergency, they got to get a baby out to help a baby live, or maybe they have to, you know, put you under anesthesia or do something to, maybe it's something with you, maybe it's not even the baby, maybe your blood pressure has severely dropped and they're like giving you a shot of adrenaline or something like that to bring your blood pressure back up. They're not going to do that if you're sitting there having a conversation with them, right? So it's kind of a hard question to answer, Jamie, because it doesn't, you don't know until you get there, right? And it's pretty rare that those things happen. But anytime you allow interventions in the birth space, the risks of those things raise. So my first question would be, have you really researched what birth is like and what the process looks like and what can happen when you introduce those things, those interventions, because there's always a ripple effect, right? And so if you're thinking, I might consent to an epidural, I might consent to have this OB that I really don't like and that is really, aggressive be at my birth. If you're considering those things already, you need to know what the possible outcomes will be. So while you're pregnant, if you're thinking, I may have an epidural, you need to know what happens, the potential side effects when you get that epidural before you get to the hospital. And the anesthesiologist is like, this could cause blood pressure. This could cause paralysis. This could cause whatever, headaches. This is, that should not be the first time you're hearing those things.
I don't think I've ever even heard them say any of those risks. They just hand a piece of paper and have them sign it.
Yeah. So I would really be aware before you even get to your birth of what are the potential emergencies that could happen? Not to send you down like an anxiety hole and like fear spiral, but to know what's my plan A, B, and C. And my partner or my doula or whoever is with me should know, hey, in the event that an emergency intervention is warranted, here's how I would like that process to go. Right.
Mhm.
Like I had zero intention of transferring to the hospital. I had 2 home births and I had zero intention of transferring to the hospital, and thankfully I did not have to. But you better believe I had like 5 backup plans because I was like, well, if I were to transfer for this reason, here's X, Y, and Z that I would like, here are my wishes for these situations. And if I were to have to transfer in postpartum for, a hemorrhage or whatever, like here's X, Y, and Z preferences in that scenario. But even if I didn't have to transfer, even if I was just at home and say, I'm in labor and my baby gets stuck, I have a shoulder dystocia. My midwife knows here's the order of events that I feel comfortable with and the levels of intervention before we majorly call this an emergency, right?
Mhm.
So I educated myself on physiologic birth to know where are the potential areas where an emergency could arise, what are those emergent situations, and what would I want to be done in that situation? At the end of the day, is your goal to have vaginal birth, or is your goal to feel like you made the choices? For some people, it's like vaginal birth or bust. Like, I am not having cesarean for any reason unless I'm about to die, right? Whereas other people are like, if it comes down to it and I'm really struggling and baby is struggling, like, let's just call it and let's go have a C-section. That's not an emergency necessarily, even if they might paint the picture that way. But at the end of the day, you knew that before you went into labor, right? You know what was going to constitute an emergency, and it doesn't have to be an emergency for you to consent to it, right? Like you can change your
Right.
mind anytime. But I guess really to answer your question of how do I know if it's an emergency, you ask, can we have a minute to think about this? And if they say, actually, no, you can't, you say, okay, why? And if they're like, hopefully they would explain in the moment, like, I would love to explain this to you, but actually, I really don't have time to explain it. Like, if they're saying that to you, I mean, most likely
Yeah, for
it's an
sure.
emergency. And that doesn't mean like, just let them do whatever. It is, okay, please proceed with whatever needs to be done, but please explain it to me as it's happening. That is a really important piece. And if you're unable, say maybe you're unconscious, or you're unable to ask for those things, make sure your husband or your partner or your doula is aware and can say those things for you. So if they are resuscitating a baby, for example, after a baby is born, this is a really common situation where um, they will act like it's an emergency, or immediately after birth if baby's not nursing well, which we'll get to that. But they'll act like it's really emergent. And there are different levels, right? So sometimes babies need help coming around after they're born. That doesn't mean that they are like lifeless and need CPR, right? It might just mean that they're having trouble because of mucus in their mouth, right? So there's different levels to quote unquote emergencies. At any point, you can say, do not cut that umbilical cord, resuscitate the baby between my legs, right? Even if it's an emergency.
Yes. And I just want to say that I had my friend Colette, she's a labor and delivery nurse, and she was on the podcast and we talked about that, like how they act like that's not an option here in the States,
They
but
do.
it is. It
Yeah.
is.
Everything is an option because you hired them. Like, you are not a slave to the hospital.
Mhm.
They don't they don't own you. They can't make decisions for you, right? So, even in an emergency, or if you're not sure if it's an emergency, you still have rights. That just because something emergent happens doesn't mean you suddenly give up all of your rights and autonomy. You can still have a say in how the emergency is handled, right? Like, even if you're transferring from a home birth to a hospital, you have the right to say, "No, I'm not getting in that ambulance, I'll get in my car, and my husband will drive me." Like, at the end of the day, I would say, really to answer your question, this is a very roundabout way to get there, but educate yourself prenatally, seriously. Like, really, really educate yourself. Do not go with the flow if you wanna have a good experience. It's not a thing. It's you cannot wing it in birth, okay? Or you're gonna get walked all over, and then you're gonna look back and be like, "Huh, that didn't go how I expected." And not to say that we can plan birth, right? But we can know what's coming and what the potentials are
Yeah. I
and
mean,
how we want those to be
flow,
handled.
the tide can just carry you away. But if you have a boat and a life raft, like no,
Right.
maybe.
Right. And somebody else in the room who knows your wishes too. Yeah. So educate yourself. And then if you get in a moment in a situation that you were not prepared for, and you're like, I don't know if this is emergent or not, ask questions if you can. If you're physically able, ask questions. And then just remember that even if it is an emergency, you can still call the shots in most cases. So, yeah, that was a really long answer, but
No, it was good. It was good. I think it's a whole bunch of things that everybody needs to think about. And it really does translate to breastfeeding too. I know a lot of people listening have already had their babies, some are pregnant and preparing to have their babies. That's why this conversation is so important to have, because pregnancy is when you start practicing the informed consent. Birth is the first test. It's not the exam. It's not the final exam. It is the first test in exercising informed consent. And then as a mother, you are going to be continuously put in positions where you have to utilize these skills to advocate for yourself and for your baby. Like birth is not the final exam. Like that is the beginning. And I don't think people realize that.
yep.
So what I mean, I know from my perspective, but as somebody who works with new moms who maybe they did a really good job of advocating for themselves during birth and they had an amazing birth, and then I see that breastfeeding all of a sudden seems to like take that amazing experience, pick it up, crumple it up, and throw it in the trash can, and all of a sudden they're like, well, I had this great birth, but breastfeeding's not working. I thought a good birth and breastfeeding would work, but they never prepared for informed consent with breastfeeding after their baby has been born. So can you kind of talk about what that looks like in the hospital in those immediate moments after birth when the nurse is trying to help them breastfeed, and kind of how informed consent quickly slides out the window again and you got to pull it back?
Yeah, this part, honestly, Jamie, is what pisses me off the most. Because I have attended so many of these births where moms will really fight tooth and nail to get the experience they want. And maybe it doesn't go exactly how they thought, but they're like, I felt really good about that. And then suddenly it's like the baby is out and the lights come on and it's like the show's over. Like, we're done now. We're done respecting your autonomy. We're done talking in quiet voices. Like, baby's out, the hard part's done. And it's almost as if like the reverence goes right out the window,
Mhm.
right? Like I always talk about the difference in a hospital birth and a home birth a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times is the provider's respect for birth and there's a reverence, right? Of like this is a really hard thing, but it's also sacred. It's a rite of passage. Like this is a mom getting to exercise her rights and to experience something that is going to transform her for the rest of her life. And there is a sacredness to birth. And then when the baby's out and it's not so hard anymore, we're able to like snap back to reality. Suddenly, everyone thinks like, "Oh, we no longer have to be quiet and respectful. She's back." You know? Like we don't there's nothing to distract her from now. And with that, everything becomes very casual. Everything becomes like, "Oh, hey, bestie, like, let me just help you do this and this and this." And you're like, "Wait, but I just went through the hardest moments of my life. Like, I need a minute. I need some space. I don't want you to be like shoving my boob into my baby's mouth. Like, leave me alone." And they certainly like, a mom certainly doesn't want you telling them as a provider or as a nurse, like, "All right, now you're on the clock. If your baby doesn't eat in the next 30 minutes, then we're gonna have to give them formula." And you're like, "Wait, wait, 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 what?" Like, I'm just still coming back to my body. Like, I'm holding my baby. I don't even know who they are yet. Like, I'm just looking at their face and, like, I just wanna hold them. And I have no desire to force them to nurse right now. And that is biological. That is not like you forgot how to be a mom all of a sudden. That is a biological thing. A baby is going to look for your breast. It's gonna happen, right? Like, if you give them the option to be skin to skin with you and to have space and have time after birth, they're gonna start rooting. They're gonna start looking for your nipple. That is instinct, right? We don't have to force that. Now, does that mean that they're always gonna successfully find it and latch right away? No, not necessarily. But babies have time, and, Jamie, like, The baby doesn't need very much the day they're born, right? They come out full. That's what I like to tell moms. Like they're not coming out like screaming for milk, right? They're coming out like just wanting to be held by you,
Yeah.
right? This is a new environment. It's cold, it's bright, it's people are loud, and they all they wanna do is smell mom and lay on mom's chest and feel her heartbeat and feel safe, right? There's no need to rush this process. So, if someone is trying to take your baby away, slap their hand. That's what I say. Don't let them touch your baby unless they're doing it on your chest, right? Even a newborn exam does not have they do not have to take your baby away and swaddle them to do a newborn exam in footprints. That pisses me off. I'm like, "You can do it right here on the bed." Like, even if you don't have to be holding your baby, right? Like, they do need to lay your baby down to check some things, but they can do that right next to you. They don't have to take your baby away, and they can wait a few hours. They don't have to do it 20 minutes after the baby's born. There's a reason there's the thing called the golden hour, and that is that first hour after birth, we should be left alone. No one should be forcing your baby to nurse. If they latch on their own, that's amazing. You should not be forcing it. You should not be doing tests or procedures or exams in that first hour. There is no physiologic need for that baby to be messed with during
It
that time.
drives me crazy when the nurses are like, okay, it's time to feed the baby. And they sit the bed straight up and they're like, all right, sit up. Now hold the baby like this and smush. And it's like, why?
No, no, I would just say no, thank you.
Like, it's not going to work. And then all that does is like create a really bad latch. And then now you've associated pain with the first latch and with
Yep.
breastfeeding, and you've undermined confidence. And like you're just sitting there trusting that these nurses have your best interest at heart, and they don't even know what they're doing half the time, and most of them will tell you that if you really ask them. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times as a doula, so I like my sweatshirt said like doula IBCLC on it, and I cannot tell you how many times the nurse looked at me and she was like, oh, you're an IBCLC too, great, I don't have to do anything here, and literally just like backed off because they're like, I help moms breastfeed all the time, but I don't know what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
they'll admit it.
Right. They've been told, like, here's a couple steps, but it's not a like a routine that works for everybody. Every baby's different. So I would say to be able to avoid that and be told what to do and whatnot after your baby is born, it again, it goes back to educating yourself before you even get there. What does my baby actually need in the first 24 hours? When does it become a problem if they're not nursing well?
Yeah.
What do I do if their latch isn't great? How do I identify a shallow latch? You can learn all these things as a mother. You don't have to be a lactation consultant to identify a shallow latch.
Mhm.
You can learn what that looks like. You can learn, like, okay, I know of 3 different positions I could try if my baby doesn't wanna latch, if they seem fussy. If I'm holding them in cross cradle, like most people portray on TV and whatever, and that's actually how I do nurse my babies, but a lot of people, it doesn't work that way. You could try laying back and holding them, like, knowing ahead of time the standard way to do everything is not the way you have to do it. You
Yeah.
have options, but you gotta know what those options are. Otherwise, when you have just had this, extremely exhausting labor and you're like, "Oh, okay, I don't really care what happens anymore because I'm tired and I'm just glad my baby's here." It's really easy to let people just tell you what to do. So, a couple of things would be learn ahead of time and then write them down. Put them in your birth plan. Make sure your husband knows, your partner knows, your doula knows. Make sure you have these things on paper and they can remind you, like, "Hey, you said that you wanted to try this." And you can be like, "Oh, yeah, I did say that, but I forgot because I'm freaking exhausted right now." Right? And knowing what happens when you introduce formula that early and, like, topping off and all of those stupid things that they tell you are fine and they're not fine,
Mhm.
learn about those ahead of time. Take a breastfeeding class prenatally. I wish every mother would take some sort of breastfeeding class prenatally. I wish I had done it with my first
Here, you can
because
get one.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure Jamie has a great one you could probably go get right now. But, like, even I'll give an example. So, with my first baby, I learned everything there is to know about birth, pregnancy, birth, and even postpartum as a mother. I did not learn about babies and breastfeeding. I was like, "I've nannied, I know how to take care of a baby." I didn't think about when a baby's 3 hours old, like, what I should be doing.
No, for sure. And I think, even a lot of moms will be like, oh, I took a breastfeeding class and it still didn't work out. And I'm like, where'd you take your breastfeeding class? Well, the hospital. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay. So maybe they told you like the bare basics of how breastfeeding works, but that's the starting point. And you should have probably known that like before you ever got pregnant. Like
right.
and like we're not taught, like that's not your fault, but like those bare basics we need to know sooner. It's the what do you do if your baby doesn't latch in that first hour? What do you do if your baby isn't latching at all and they're starting to say, okay, well, now he really needs formula because he's not latching? Like, what other options do you have? And the thing is with breastfeeding, there are so many options. And that is like you brought up the birth plan. And I love that because I actually just did a workshop and it was on a breastfeeding plan because everybody has a birth plan and nobody has a breastfeeding plan. They put breastfeeding check, skin to skin check, and they have no plan for what happens in those first 3 days when the nurses are saying, oh, your baby's lost weight and he's not latching well. You need to get formula now.
Mhm. Yep. Even even in my home birth, I had a midwife who was an IBCLC, and she helped me with the initial latch because I couldn't figure it out on my own. She did the newborn exam, said, "Oh, your baby's tongue-tied, you need to get those revised." I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" And then she gave me a number of a pediatric dentist to call. They said, "We can get you in 3 weeks." And that was it. And I was like, "Okay, so my baby's not latching. Whatever this issue you're supposedly telling me is wrong, I can't get fixed for 3 weeks." And she made it seem like, "You fix this, it's all better." And I was like, "Okay." I knew nothing. I had not done any research. She helps me latch the first time. She leaves, I can never get baby to latch again. And I'm like, what do I do?" I'm thinking, I don't need to do all of this research and work because my midwife is an IBCLC.
Yeah.
Surely I will have her help, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And, like, it just me as a very type A, very prepared person, I'm like, I read a whole book on breastfeeding. I had never used my body and my senses to figure out, like, how do I position my nipple?
Yeah.
How do I didn't realize you had to put the baby's nose to your nipple. I was, like,
I actually
holding
don't recommend that one.
okay, well, that's good because 'cause I've never actually done that either because I
No,
feel like it doesn't work,
but that is what everybody says. And
but that's what you say. Yeah,
is the exact point is that everybody will give you these like bite-sized talking points about
and
breastfeeding.
you're like, "What does that
Yeah,
mean?"
there's no context. There's no like it frustrates me hearing that too about like I love midwives who care about breastfeeding and I know some really great IBCLC midwives, I will say, but I also see that story and hear that story a lot where somebody thinks because their midwife is an IBCLC, they're going to be able to just handle the full picture and they just it's not even that they don't know what they're doing. They like don't have the capacity to.
No, it's
They just
exhausting.
don't have the capacity to. And it's not a slight against them. It's just like at some point you kind of got to pick a lane and stick in it. And as much as the two are connected, like breastfeeding care really requires so much time and attention when there are challenges. Like
Mhm.
requires a lot. And a lot of people will be like, oh, like it's not just like a 20-minute visit where you go get your latch fixed and
It's
everything's
very hard. It's
it's
very hard to
very
breastfeed when
hard.
you have never done it before and your baby doesn't just latch automatically.
Yeah, and it's like it just the tongue tie thing, like that's a whole other conversation of informed consent because
Mhm.
what do people tell you? They tell you you've got to go get it released and it's all going to get better. And that's not the full picture.
Yeah.
Do I believe in releases? Absolutely. But I believe there's a proper structure to how we do a release, when we do a release, and what we do in the meantime, because there's going to be a wait period. I hate to tell you, like, it's not going to be like, oh, go get this clipped and it's all better. Like, even if you could get it clipped right away, it doesn't always work that way.
Yep.
But let's say like it's just like there's going to be a waiting period, whether it's 2 days or 2 weeks. Like you need to know how to feed your baby in the meantime.
Yep. And spoiler alert, we got that revised 3 weeks later and nothing changed.
Yeah, well, and that's because there was no process, right?
Right, it was an unnecessary release in my opinion. There should have been body work. That's
There's
what should have happened.
there's always got to be body work first. That's what I tell everybody. Like, I'm not going to go into a whole thing on this because like I've got a guide on it and like I talk about this constantly. But it's like at a bare minimum, do not get a release without body work, but do not, I even struggle to say don't get a release without seeing an IBCLC, because you saw an IBCLC and she told you to go get a release. And it's like,
From like a 3-second exam. I'm like, you're not checking oral function?
Exactly. Informed consent means you need to understand the function of the tongue and which part of that function is not working properly and why a release is the answer.
Yep, I knew none of that.
And
I was just like, "Oh, my saving grace," and then it didn't work, and I was like, "Well, shit, what do I do now?"
yeah, no, I see it all the time. And I work with so many moms who have gotten a release and then they're like, nothing's getting better. In fact, sometimes it gets worse. And they're like, I don't know what else to do. And I'm like, okay, well, first we need to take all these steps because these should have been taken first. We've got to get you to a somewhat functional standpoint. And then sometimes we even need to do a re-release because the first release wasn't done properly. Like, it's like there's so much just within that conversation that it's a lot to digest when you're in the thick of it.
I'm very fortunate that I am very stubborn, and so I was like, "I'm not giving my baby formula. What are my other options?" So you know what I did? I spent all night for the first several weeks postpartum pumping and feeding my baby with a syringe, and I didn't sleep. I had postpartum mood disorders. I was very anxious and very lonely and very frustrated all the time because I couldn't feed my baby like other moms could feed their baby. And if someone had just maybe helped me to have the baby latch better, this would have never been an issue. And it's just very frustrating because I was told this is how it is and this is what you got to do. It was not, here is the situation and here are all of the ways you could approach this. And my second experience was very different. I had a different midwife. I had much more of a plan going into it. And even still, right after she was born, she did latch. But in the second day postpartum, I was like, why is her latch so painful? What am I doing wrong? I'm a seasoned mom. I should know how to do this. I nursed my other kid for 2 years. Like, what is going on? And I had to continually advocate and say, something is not right. How do I fix this specific thing? Like, not just taking, oh, well, just syringe feed her as an answer. It was like, no, I can breastfeed my baby. I just need a little bit of help. And continuing to ask, and thankfully I had a midwife who would just like show up at my doorstep if I needed her. But just because you've done it before doesn't mean your next baby is going to be easy because you have experience. Like, every baby's different and you have to be prepared for all scenarios. So again, educate yourself and have resources available.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I know I've had people be like, oh, you're just trying to like promote your class. And it's like, yeah, I am, because you need it.
Because you freaking need to take it.
You need it. And it's like, and I'm not saying that from a, like, I want you to take my class. Like, I want you to have resources before your baby gets here, because when you are awake for 4 days in a row and your baby's not eating and you're trying to figure it out and you like have absolutely no capacity to learn anything new, that is not the time to learn how to ask questions about tongue tie and what your options are. Like, it's just not. And like, you have to learn these things beforehand.
I feel the same way when people ask me questions about, they ask me questions about birth interventions. They ask me questions about like, should I get this test in pregnancy or not? And should I do this? And should I do this? And what about postpartum? And what should I be eating? Is it safe to do this? And I'm like, I made courses. I have 5 holistic courses for a reason. And I'm like, take the course. I will literally give it to you for half off. Like, I don't care. I just want you to like take the initiative.
Yes.
Learn. Like, I have created this for you with all of your answers. I'm not just trying to sell you something like some junk. Like, go educate yourself. You have to educate yourself one way or another. But since you're coming to me, let me give you an avenue to do that. Like,
for sure. No, because the internet is such a confusing place and it's hard to navigate. And
because everything is just marketing.
No, exactly.
I hate marketing. I hate it.
I know. And I understand. It is. I understand why people are skeptical, because, you know, you are faced with so many influencers trying to sell you everything that they've never even like cared about. Right. Like, I don't know, like I just had a whole conversation with a company about influencer marketing and why I try not to do it. Like, if I'm promoting something, it's something I believe in, because I think influencer marketing has eroded trust.
Agreed.
And I think, you know, and that's not to say like I don't believe in marketing. Like it's necessary to a degree, but like it has to be ethical, right? And
Mhm.
I'm getting off topic here, but it kind of all actually comes back because you were talking earlier about the doctors pushing interventions, and I feel like it's all a marketing gig for them. Like, what can I market? How can I market this medicine? How can I market this intervention? It's
Oh,
all
yeah.
about
I mean,
you.
they
And
very much get compensated. So,
they do, like, you let your doctors sell you on everything. You let your midwives sell you on everything. And again, it's not to shit on midwives. It's like, but why is it that when it comes to doulas and lactation consultants, suddenly moms are like, oh no, they're trying to be paid for the service they're providing?
yeah, I don't know, man.
Side note, and I'm sorry to the listeners who are like not thinking in that mind frame, but if you are one of them, like also ask yourself, like if you care about women and you care about women having equal pay and women's rights and all of this stuff, you can't get mad when doulas and lactation consultants are selling you resources that contradict what your doctors said, because there's a
Yeah.
reason. There is a
Right.
reason that we are contradicting the hospital.
Yes. As a doula, is an unregulated profession. I am not held to anything. I am not indoctrinated into anything. I am not told I have to do anything, and I do not benefit from disagreeing with a medical professional. Like,
Right.
there is nothing that is going to like, I'm not expected to tell you anything. I'm not being incentivized to tell you anything ever. So anything I tell you is what I truly, truly believe from anecdotal and evidence-based research that I have gathered from multiple different points of view, multiple different experiences. And it's just, yeah, I think you're right. It's really hard to cut through the noise when we're being sold everything all the time from, and it's all greenwashed, it's all marketing, and it's all, yeah, it's really hard to know what to believe.
No, it is. It is. And I feel so bad for moms right now because it's like sometimes I get mad because I'm like, they have so much information at their fingertips and they're putting on their earmuffs and not looking at it and listening to it. But also like when are so many voices and it's coming from all angles, like
Yeah.
that sometimes is a protective mechanism. And so if you are listening to that, like I want you to think about like where you are in your journey, what you want your journey to look like, and figure out like what is the most direct supportive path to that. And it is getting informed. It is getting informed without pressure and agendas.
Yes.
I will tell people like I'm biased. I am 100% biased.
It's impossible to not be biased.
It's impossible not to be. Your doctor is biased because they're giving you their recommendations based off the emergency surgery they just did that could have been prevented if they had done something different that they missed. And now they're trying to be overprotective. And so that's a bias. Like biases exist. I am 100% biased, but I am not promoting an agenda. Unless my agenda is that you as a mother have like intuition that should be listened to and the right
Sure.
thing. Like,
Yes, totally.
so all right. So you said you have some resources for pregnant moms. I've got resources for breastfeeding moms. What are your resources for pregnant moms? Where can they find them? And how can they connect with you if they want to learn more about how they can be as stubborn as you are?
Yeah, sure. So if this conversation really hit home for you and you're like, I need to get informed, like I really want to know all of my options, I have a collection of courses. So again, my brand is called Nested and Nourished, and there is the Nested and Nourished course collection, which includes 5 separate courses. So you can actually buy these individually. You don't have to get the whole thing, but you can also buy them all together as a bundle for cheaper. But we've got Real Food Prenatal, which is all about nourishment during pregnancy, how to really truly nourish your body through food, herbs, movement, all of those things. We've got Remedies and Relief, which is my favorite one actually, and it's the cheapest one. But it's basically like a holistic toolkit for your whole family. So everything from pregnancy to like the flu to your kids get hand, foot, and mouth. Like, what are all of the things you can do naturally to combat those things? Yeah, I'm like, every mom needs this for real. It's like a handbook in your back pocket or on your bookmark tab on Safari, right? And then I have the big birth course, which is called Unshakable Birth. That's where you're really going to find all of like the informed consent stuff, your autonomy stuff, but you're also going to learn about birth, physiologic birth, and what all of those options look like, all of those plan A, B, C, and D, as well as like how to write a birth plan. It is like chock full of information, right? And then there's Blood, Bone, and Broth, and that is all about postpartum, sacred postpartum rest, healing, nourishment, all of the above. And then we have rooted and responsive, which is all about breastfeeding and newborn care from a perspective of secure attachment. So we're not talking about sleep training. We're not talking about bottle feeding. We are talking about physiologic breastfeeding and infant sleep, co-sleeping, all of those things. So that was a real big mouthful. Those are obviously my paid options, right? Like those are courses. I also have lots of free resources. So if you go to my website, nestedandnourished.com, and I'm sure you'll link that in the show notes, but you can find all of those courses, but you can also find some freebies. So I've got like a holistic nutrition guide. I've got a morning sickness guide, a first trimester checklist, all of those things you can grab anytime, or you can catch me over on the Holistic Pregnancy Podcast. And then lastly, I'm always available on Instagram at Nested and Nourished. You can literally send me a DM any time of day, and I'm probably going to respond to you immediately because it's like my favorite thing to do is talk with people in real life. So please come chat with me or join our email newsletter. I send out recipes once a week. There's so much to do. So
I
yeah.
love it. That's great. Thank you so much, Taylor, for
Yeah.
just a really great conversation on the importance of informed consent, why learning it as soon as possible is important, but like how it really follows you through motherhood and what it looks like in postpartum as well. I love that. Thanks for coming, and we will share everything in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie.
All right, Mama Bear, that is a wrap for today. If this episode helped you feel a little more confident or a little more prepared for breastfeeding, can I ask you a quick favor? Go ahead and leave me a review. It helps other moms find this podcast and join us in this amazing community of fierce and confident mama bears. And hey, if you know a friend who could use some encouragement or real talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and all things motherhood, share this episode with her. You've got this, Mama Bear. Trust your instincts, stay fierce, and I'll catch you in the next episode.